Ant-Man and the Wasp stars Michael Douglas and Paul Rudd, among many others. It is the sequel to Ant-Man from a few years back. And just to get started with this, the first Ant-Man you weren't totally impressed with, but you didn't mind it, right?
No, I think it's like a middle-of-the-road Marvel movie. I won't deny that I had a grudge against it because Edgar Wright's one of my favorite directors.
Right.
He quit, got kicked off, however you want to frame it.
Sure.
He was supposed to direct it, and then he didn't, so I just had that natural grudge, like rooting for one of my favorite directors. But still, the first one was very enjoyable.
It was, and it was enjoyable even though there was a lot of writers and a lot of production guff with all of this, and there was just a lot going on. Now we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, and this follows up maybe, 2 years after the events of the first one? I think, roughly. He's at the end of his parole.
Right. It's right after Civil War kind of ends.
Yeah, so the first one, to me, had a nice scaled down sort of sense to the plot. There's probably going to be a lot of ant puns going on in this one, which is good. And I felt like this one stayed the same. This is kind of a smaller scale plot. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I do like they, no pun intended, shrunk the story down. It made it more personal, and it's not like, this big... Because especially after we just got Infinity War, where, won't spoil that movie at all, where we get this massive ending, this kind of epic movie. Yeah. So I'm glad that they flipped the coin, and then with this one, it was a little bit smaller scale, and it was more personal story, and more than I did in the first one, I really felt for these characters, was rooting for them to get their mission accomplished.
Yeah, I was too. I there wasn't really a character in this movie I didn't enjoy, I kind of just liked them all. I mean, there's some slimy characters in there, but they don't overdo those characters.
Oh,
to the point
Walton
where I got
Goggins
sick of them.
is the ultimate
That's
slime
all he
ball.
does is play a slime
But he's
ball.
great at it.
Yeah, he really is. So when it comes to the good guys, though, I just really like the addition of the Wasp. I think she's a cool character. She's got cool powers. She flies. All that good stuff. But I will say if there was a weak point to this, it probably was the villains for me, or lack thereof.
Well, the two actors who played the primary antagonists, they were fine. They did a fine job and everything, but it was just kind of like a generic motivation.
It was, and it didn't completely bother me. I mean, they were fine. No. The thing about the villains for this, they're not versing these villains for this. They have a thing that they want to accomplish, and these villains are getting in the way. It's like this opportunity that they want to make happen keeps getting stolen away. And that's one thing I liked about this plot, that it moved along from one situation to the next very gracefully to me. Yes. I liked how things moved.
Yeah. This movie is well-paced. There weren't any real lulls in the story or any of the character development or anything like that. But I will say that as far as the action goes, there were some cool moments. I think they really started to capitalize on what they can do with just the technology that Ant-Man has. So I think the action was definitely a step up from the first one in this one.
I think it was too, and I think that it benefited from us not having to learn how this technology works anymore. We all get it. We know how they do what they do. So now they just can go and do it. Personally, I could have used a little bit more action in the pacing. I like the way the story moved along, but I felt like there just wasn't enough action in this movie, and I felt like I saw a lot of it in the trailer. Unfortunately, this is just a plague we have now. I've just seen a lot of the action in the trailer.
Yeah, and I will say, as far as the action, once you got the first action scene with the Wasp, I did have that moment where it's like, oh wow, it kind of took us a minute to get here, didn't it? So I do agree with you that even though I did like the action, I think there were some parts where the action was lacking.
It was lacking, but I still think that the action in Ant-Man is some of the most creative action in the Marvel Universe. I love that they can shrink down so fast, they can get really big, they can make objects shrink or get larger. It just leaves sort of a playground open for these action scenes.
It didn't, but at the same time, the lack of action didn't bog down the story at all.
No, so let's talk about not just the story, but something that Ant-Man has always had in the previous movie, and this one is the comedy. Did you think the comedy landed?
I would say the comedy landed just slightly less than the first movie. There's the gang, Michael Pena and T.I. and all those, his sidekicks in real life.
Yeah.
The scenes with them, I felt like that's where the comedy just felt a little forced. It felt like every time those guys showed up, jokes, get them going, churn them out. Not every one of them landed to where it's like, all right, can we move on from these guys and go to the next scene? Yeah. I would say just specifically that part of the comedy.
Yeah.
Was what I had a problem with. As far as Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's just endlessly charming and hilarious. So just he can sell any joke, and he does in this movie.
He does. He doesn't have to do much to make me laugh or even smile. But Michael Pena, I still liked him. I think he's a funny dude, and I like him. I like his character as Quick Whip. But you're right. Him and his little sidekicks, they don't get all the laughs. That's for sure. Yeah. Some of them fell a little bit flat. And with this movie, one thing that I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but it just doesn't take many risks. And I know that these movies are PG-13 and they're geared a little bit more towards kids, but this could easily pass for a PG movie. This was barely any real violence to it, any real swearing to it. This is very light. And I think it's good, but like if you're thinking of taking your younger kids to a superhero movie this year, it probably should be Ant-Man because it's funny, it's heartwarming, it's got a lot of family elements to it, and it's just it doesn't take many risks, I guess.
No, but I think as far as like risks going in bold new directions, I think that's what they did with Infinity War.
They did. It was like so dark.
Yeah, and so I just think that this is, kind of almost reactionary to Infinity War, where it's, bummer at the end of that movie. I'm not going to say anything. And then, you go into this movie and it's more lighthearted. So I think that it might be somewhat reactionary.
Sure.
But also the director of the first one and this one, Peyton Reed, he's always had kind of like a light style to him. So it's not that surprising. But you're right. I do feel like this was unnecessarily PG-13.
Buffs.
So there's our thoughts on another big summer blockbuster movie this year. So put a score to it, Dennis. What'd you think?
Well, before we give our score, we just want to say this is actually going to be the last movie that we give our standard 1 to 10 score on.
Yeah.
Some changes coming. We'll put out a video, let you guys know what's happening and why we're making this big change. But I just felt like we should announce that this is going to be the last movie we give our 1 to 10 score on.
Yeah.
So having said that, I thought Ant-Man and the Wasp was fun, entertaining. There are some minor flaws to pick out, but overall, I think you said it best. That this is a very light movie. It's a good summer feel-good movie, especially after how dense and dark we got after Infinity War.
Or Deadpool too. It's just like
even that
violence. Yeah.
Right. So it is kind of good to have this change of pace with a lighter superhero movie. I'm going to give Ant-Man and the Wasp a 7.5 out of 10.
Well, that's great. I enjoyed myself with Ant-Man. I probably enjoyed it just slightly more than the first one. I like this one a little bit more.
I gave the first one a 7, so this one's just a little bit.
Yeah, and there are no glaring flaws. There maybe are a thing here and a thing there that I didn't care for very much, but all in all, I really enjoyed myself. I'm just going to go a little higher. I'm going to go an 8. I like this movie. I definitely recommend go see it.
Buffs.
So there's our review of Ant-Man and the Wasp. What did you guys think of the movie? What did you think of the lighter tone? Leave all your comments down below.
Be sure to join us next week where we'll break out the new scoring system for the Dwayne Johnson movie Skyscraper.
That's a good one to break that out for.
Yes. Especially once you guys see what the new system is, I think it's the perfect movie to start it off on.
Definitely.
So we'll bring you that review next Friday. But as always, no matter where you are, no matter who you're with,
watch more movies.